Hello, my name is Kaz Kasozi and we are back in the box. This is a continuation from the previous class where we were talking about applying reverb as an insert. In this one, we're going to be applying reverb in parallel. Basically, we apply the reverb to a different channel and then we send a copy of the dry signal to that channel in order for it to get reverb applied to it. And this means we'll look at this area here where you see the send, where it says sends, that row. And if I go onto the voice channel, click there, I can go and send it to a bus. I'll say bus 1 here. And as soon as I do that, a track is created here for us. And it's on this track that we will apply reverb. So I go there and search for a simple one. Let me use the similar thing that we used. And it comes up. So the idea here is that this channel to which we want to apply reverb is going to send a copy of it by me raising this level here. And whatever level we put is the amount of dry signal that is being sent to this track. And then that little copy that we have sent to this track will then have this reverb applied to it. And then the two, the original dry signal and the now applied reverb, will meet up at this point and at the stereo bus. So the advantage here, the first advantage to speak of here, is that this particular track now has its dry signal all intact. And then this is simply applying only the reverb without any dry signal. Because once the dry signal goes there, it only comes back as reverb, not with the dry signal. And to show that is that if you look here, previously on our output, we had a certain percentage of dryness and then a bit of wet. But this one is only the wet signal because there's no point for us to have a dry signal because the original is there, still all intact. However, I'm going to have this like 100% because I can control how much reverb I get by changing this level here and or the value of the fader there. Okay, let me play this and we have a listen. Yeah, so you saw there, obviously exaggerated it. Let's first go and look for a slightly better reverb. Well, not necessarily better, just a different one. I want to explain something. So I have one here called Kansanga Corridor. And this is a reverb I designed by, tweaking these parameters in order for me to get a particular space. Because if you think about it, reverb is really a space. It's like a virtual space in which all these sounds are passing so that you can get a flavor of an environment. I created this one because I like in the house, in the house we grew up in, there was a corridor in which sometimes sound, because there was no furniture in it or anything like that, there's a way sound behaved in that space. At the time, I didn't know anything, of course, about reverb as a child and everything. But if your ears are keen, you're keen to the different spaces. And I used to like the way it sounded in that corridor. And it sounded a bit like what I've created here. I'm going to have this reverb on the Akogo and on the Darbuka. But before that, let's first hear what it sounds like on the voice. I need to raise this to 100% because I'm able to control the reverb by how much I send to that channel. Okay, let's have a listen. So you can hear it like it sounds better than the one we had before because I took time to actually work on those parameters as opposed to what we were using previously. Now, the other advantage of applying reverb in this fashion as in a parallel sense is that I'm able to use the same instance of Reverb to apply effect to different tracks. So without actually disturbing the vocal here, I can go to the Akogo and say send to bass 2, and that is also sending to this particular reverb. By the way, I should rename it to so that we will remain orderly. If now I click here, you can see that it's saying it's sending to bass 1, which is a reverb. So by doing this, that means the same instance of reverb is being used by these two instruments, and it can be used by any other still. All these I can use without having to repeat calling that instrument up as an insert here, because every instance you put is putting some pressure, or well, not pressure. Every instance that you put as an insert is putting some extra work to the computer's processor. So you find that your CPU will be lagging in some cases if there are way too many plugins. Just imagine, for example, if you had like 150 channels or something like that, or 150 tracks of music, which can happen, you know. If you start loading every single thing with plugins, the computer will choke up for sure. So this is one way to alleviate that problem. So let me play it and we sense how it sounds like on the Akogo. And I'm going to mute the vocal for a second so that we can really pay attention to what the reverb is doing here. I don't want to solo the instrument because I want it to be heard in context with the rest of the instruments. So let's have a listen again. So here I could also pan the reverb the other way to the right whilst I have the Akogo playing to the left. You know, creating like a space and trying to use the reverb in a more creative manner. Okay, I'm going to put that back. I was just demonstrating an idea. These are some of the creative choices that you could have. And then I'm going to apply the same instance of reverb to the Darbuka, this one here. So this one we're sending also to the same place, to bass 1, where the reverb is. And this time I'm going to play and solo so you can hear there's a certain element I want to explain about the design of the parameters here. Now you hear that kind of sound. That kind of reverb, I've designed it to have a pre-delay that is a little bit long, yet the size of the room or of the space is small, because this particular area, which I'm trying to emulate or to simulate here, was like a corridor. At the end of that corridor had another shorter corridor which opened out to a courtyard. So if you would make sound and you had all the doors open, you'd get these reflections within the main corridor in which you are, and then there will be new reflections in the secondary corridor, and then finally you'd also hear distant sounds from the courtyard, which was like also had walls around it, yet had an open roof. So, like when you're imagining a space in which music is going to be, when you're trying to think about the reverb you're going to use, you should imagine a space in which this music is actually happening. I believe in that way you can create more interesting things in a purposeful manner. Of course, you can create in art, you can create all kinds of things without even thinking about it, but if it's something you've already thought about, like you come very focused on it, then it's very easy to design a space and do what you want. So I already knew that to create that, I would firstly need a long pre-delay, and I would need like a smaller room and a very complex density, because there will be all sorts of different types of reverb that from the position when I used to listen to this kind of sound when I was as a kid in that corridor. So I'll play that again, so in the context of what I've just explained, so you have a listen again. And as I do so, I'm going to change these two parameters especially. So by increasing, I'm making the courtyard farther away. By increasing this size, then I'll be making the corridor bigger. By taking it down, the corridor would be more of a tunnel, like a high corridor. I think you get the idea. You can create kinds of interesting spaces with this kind of thing. I think now we get the idea of having something in parallel. Let's try to go farther with this. Interestingly, it has had the effect of making the drum sound like it's farther back as far as these different musicians, if we're now to think of them as different musicians. It makes it sound like that instrument is farther back in the mix. It's farther back in terms of the way they have arranged themselves when they're performing this song. And this is a very useful thing also to think about when you're using reverb in parallel, because you're trying to construct a space within which these musicians, these instruments are in the same environment. And when you do it like we did in the previous video, where it's as inserts, it's harder to get that sense of oneness where everything sounds together. And we got to remember that these days a lot of music is made one track at a time, where people are playing overdubs. We record one thing at a time. Now you can imagine with a tune like this, I recorded one person playing one instrument at a time, but when we're listening to it, we don't want to be thinking or kind of analyzing that sense of one person playing different things, or different people playing the different tracks but not playing together. We want to hear a whole thing. We want like a delivered piece of work that is sounding as one. And applying reverb in parallel via sense gives you the opportunity to do that with much more ease, because it's like one space being applied to several instruments, and it helps them sit better within the mix. Okay, I think we can take this further.